Let me know when you're good.
There we go.
Okay, all right, we are off and running. Yeah, why don't you let everybody know who are you and where are you located?
My name is John Saint Amand. I am located in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.
Just sticking out there on the eastern side of Canada, out there in no man's land, doing your own thing.
Yeah, a little bit further to the east relative to Maine.
Man, that's what's the weather like up there these days?
It's starting to get a little bit warmer. I mean, we have a relatively short summer season. My house is air conditioned, my garage is not, so I'm realizing the mistake that I've made is jumping into the garage just to get the cool gym backdrop. And it's warm in here, but I'll survive. We get
Warm
about
by Canadian
two and a half, 3 months. Yeah. I mean, we're talking like I think right now we're in the high 70s, low 80s kind of thing.
Oh,
Maybe
okay,
mid 80s
yeah.
at best.
Yeah, no, that's warm. I would say that's warm. Is it humid or not humid?
Quite humid. There's just something about the air here. It's always humid in the summer.
Yeah, that makes sense because I'm from the East Coast, from New England, and Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire. There's plenty of humidity there, and so based upon
Oh
where you're
yeah.
geographically, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, going back and forth setting this up in the email, you said that you were elected to the Halifax Regional Council in October 2024. That sounds quite official. What is that? What does that mean? What does it entail? How did that even happen?
Well, at first it means that I'm one of 16 councillors plus one mayor that make up the effectively the board of directors for a fairly large city. We have about 500,000 residents.
Okay. And what are your roles and responsibilities?
Well, I represent
Creating
my
utopia?
particular area. Well, I mean, that's the ultimate goal. But, we have some uphill battles to fight. I mean, our population has expanded considerably over the last 8 years. So we're experiencing some growing pains that were not traditionally terribly common in Halifax. It was kind of a sleepy city that was growing along at like a 1% rate per year. And then all of a sudden we jumped to a 4 or 5% increase, more or less during COVID, and it really hasn't slowed down a lot since.
Why do you think
So
it
we've
jumped
we've
during
grown.
COVID?
Well, part of it was that we had some immigration changes that occurred immediately following COVID. That was a little bit more permissive, and so we had a lot of new entrants to the country. But even within our own country, we wound up attracting a lot of people from other areas in Canada because during COVID, we had a comparatively low rate of transmission. There were a lot of lockdowns. I mean, it was pretty restrictive, but at the same time, it did mean that we had pretty good control over where the disease was proliferating. And so it meant that we wound up becoming kind of an attractive spot. And with everybody working from home, then you could move to Halifax, buy a home at a fraction of the cost of what you would have in Toronto or Calgary or Montreal or whatever,
Okay.
and work remotely and get the best of both worlds. You get a lower cost of living by living here and, reap the salary that you get by working at home base in Toronto, but doing so remotely.
Man, the cost of living thing is no joke.
Oh, yeah.
If you can present an attractive cost of living relative to other areas, that will be just in my humble opinion, one of the greatest just attractions for your metropolitan area compared to anybody else. Because I can't speak for your country, but man, things are just so expensive and so crazy down here in the US with no end in sight. And I'm in the greater Seattle area, which in and of itself is a preposterously expensive area to not even live
Hmm.
amazingly, but to live what you would just consider comfortably. Let's just use the word comfortably. You don't have to like have nightmares at night as to whether or not you're going to be able to pay your rent. There's food in the fridge. The heat's on in the
Yep.
winter. There's a car in the driveway. You can put clothes on your kid's back, and it would be great if you could take one vacation a year. Like that seems quasi reasonable, right?
Yeah.
The amount of like relative income needed to support that around here is you would think somebody's like a surgeon. It's crazy.
And that's become the struggle here too, because while we had that relatively low cost of living several years ago, we've been subject to the same kind of rapid inflation that everybody else has. And so that that safety net has really shrunk quite a bit. And so you have this high proportion of your daily cost of living coming out of your salary. And things just aren't keeping up. So I think we're very much in the same boat. It doesn't seem to be particularly unique to any specific area of the country either. Everybody's having a hard time on that front.
What did you have some attraction of wanting to get into politics?
I always kind of circled around it because I was interested in it. I'm a marketing guy. I ran a marketing company of my own for 25 years after spending a couple of years working for an agency. And in that career, running my own communications company, I wound up through my father back in the day, himself being involved in politics, getting to know some people that were in and around the political sphere. And so I wound up being a communications advisor for quite a number of people that wound up running for office. I
Mm,
was always really interested in the process. I was just never at a point in my life where I even considered myself a logical candidate. I wasn't old enough. I didn't have enough experience. I didn't understand the ins and outs of policy, but I did understand how to communicate. And so after a little while, I started to get more and more interested. But we had two really great representatives at the city level and at the provincial level that had been in office for quite a long time, didn't seem like they were going anywhere anytime soon, and I had no interest in challenging them. I helped get them elected. So
mm.
until one of them decided they were done or moving on or doing something else, I didn't think I had anywhere to go. So I was just kind of quietly observing things from the outside. And then both of them announced that they were moving on to other roles, all within the span of about 4 or 5 months. I had heard that they were thinking about it for a while, but it wasn't official until just a few months before the election here. And so I decided to take a crack at it.
And so do you still have your marketing company on the side, or is this now your full-time occupation?
This is the full time, but I still do a decent amount of part-time work for the clients that are very accommodating. They afford me a lot of flexibility because the reality is for communications consulting, I could kind of fit that into my schedule whenever the creativity hit me. That was
Mm.
kind of how I did it already anyway. And so it wound up meaning that I had the flexibility to be able to do the work as a counselor full time and still be able to provide professional advice to the clients that relied on me for that kind of communication side of things.
No, you and I have spoken a couple times over the years, um, and so, while it's not like we're neighbors and we know each other very well, you get a sense of people, get a feeling that you're probably what I would consider generally a rational individual, which I would agree with you on
I'd
some
like to think
topics.
so.
Yeah, I agree with you on some topics, disagree on some others. It'd be that like a normal interaction of like, okay, it's nice to have somebody that seems to be generally level-headed and rational and grounded involved in the political landscape. And I'm curious, like from the outside looking in, most regular people, I think, if I could get in there and get my hands dirty, I could, turn this puppy around in a couple months and no big deal. And then I'm sure most of us don't have an idea of once you get in there, the difficulty, for lack of a better word, of potentially tackling some of the problems that everyone knows what the problems are, but actually, I would think tackling them and all like the relationships and interworkings and things that we didn't know come into play, and all of a sudden, this isn't a quick snap of the fingers. What was your, I guess, expectation before getting behind the curtain and now getting in there and actually trying to move the needle? What's it like?
Well, I know, I mean, my expectation was certainly higher than what I knew would be achievable. If we have any Linchpin members that steer cruise ships, that's what this feels like. It
Hmm.
really is trying to steer municipal government, especially one the size of Halifax. I mean, we have 4,000 employees
Oh,
in
wow.
Halifax to provide service to 500,000 residents. So, there's a lot of written down rules, a lot of policies, a lot of red tape. And so, coming into it, I recognized that that would be the case, but I also had, coming from my entrepreneurial background, I had this expectation that, okay, like a little bit of energy, I can employ that energy, and hopefully that'll spark a lot of things happening within the municipality fairly quickly, even though I'm only one vote on council.
Mm,
But we don't have like we're not executive level directors within the city. We're just the board of directors. Staff actually controls everything in the way
okay.
that we're structured. So I have to establish those relationships and talk to people about what's possible in the short term, medium, and long term, and keep my eye on that ball as things shift over time. And just in 6 months, just trying to learn who I need to talk to about what matter. And, we also have two radically different seasons here that we have to contend with. I mean, fall and winter are very different than spring and summer here. So,
Hmm.
I pivot from my first couple of months being a counselor, fielding phone calls about snow removal and salt being put down, to now pivoting to, how come the local park hasn't been mowed and we're trudging through 6 inch tall grass to play soccer. It's a pretty different shift between those two things. So, the more I can think of myself as an entrepreneurial problem solver and connecting the right people to the answers that they need, the happier I'll wind up being in the role, because I know that some of the bigger changes are going to take a lot more time and a lot more collaboration with other people at the city.
And having that communications background, I'm sure you just lean on that on a daily basis because
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to make the assumption that whether you're talking to your peers, your subordinates, or your superiors, you have to learn the landscape of like, okay, these people I can just shoot straight. I can get in and have a 3 minute conversation. I don't need to like dance around for a bit. This person, we gotta kind of warm up a little bit, let them know I'm on your
Yeah.
side. We're thinking of the big picture. Like, and you probably got to learn all those different things to just actually communicate, to get to the point, to figure out how we're going to be able to get this done. Man, that's got to be a lot to navigate.
I've had the perfect storm of backgrounds to try to get into this field. I mean, not only was I interested in politics and I was a communicator, but I've been a CrossFit coach for 9 years. And so I'm used to dealing with very different personalities
Mm,
and reading people in the moment and figuring out where they are on any given day. Like, those are all the soft skills that you don't realize contribute to how good you are working with people. And so, for any CrossFit coaches out there, if you're considering a career in politics, believe me, you've got some of the requisite skills in working with people, because that really is something that you have to get good at very quickly. And
and
so, whether it's standing in front of a crowd and trying to win them over on what you're about to tell them to do, or just having the discipline to work really, really hard when it's uncomfortable, because you know that the end result is worth it. Like, these are all things that you learn by doing CrossFit and being a coach. And, I've been lucky enough to be in this CrossFit journey for 10 years and coaching for 9, and that has all helped me along the way, especially in this.
when in doubt, just, give them a burpee penalty if you don't like what you're hearing. 50
I've even
burpees.
had some of my fellow counselors come out for a workout. Unfortunately, it was the middle of winter, and so the weather got in the way, so not everybody was able to make it. But I'm going to do another boot camp for everybody, and just a bit of a team building exercise, but more than anything, for them to get to know me better too.
And how long will you be in this position?
4 years at a time.
Okay. Okay.
So October of 2024. So we'll go to the polls again in October 2028.
Okay, well, good. Best of luck to you, man. Best of luck to you. That's pretty wild. I wish you, nothing but just an upward trajectory up there. It's good for everybody. Um, Also curious, one of the things that you mentioned you've got on your fitness resume, if you will, that I don't think we chatted about previously, was you said that you were a run club instructor for half marathons for a few seasons. I don't think I
I
knew that
was,
for
yeah.
that distance in any way. What was are you just a lifelong runner, or was that just you dipping your toe in the water for a bit?
Dipping my toe in for a bit, for lack of a better idea for how to manage fitness with the time schedule that I had running my own company. So I've gone through different seasons in my life. So in my 20s, I was in martial arts. In my 30s, I became a runner. In my 40s, I found CrossFit. And so in my 30s, when I was kind of at the peak frenetic pace running my own communications company, finding the time of the day to be able to get fitness in was Swiss cheese. It was all over the place. I couldn't
Mm,
figure out how to structure it. So committing to a class schedule like I had in martial arts, it wasn't something that I could do. And I tried cycling for a little while, but there are times a year when the daylight is just simply not available and it wasn't safe to go out and bike here. So I decided to shift to running when a few of my neighbors told me about the running room, a chain of running stores here that
okay.
had their own run club that ran twice a week, and they would have goal races that they would help everyone prepare for under the auspices that by providing this free service, you'd wind up buying a whole bunch of stuff from them, and
Sure.
it generally worked. And so I wound up participating in that, and then they recruited people that had participated to become volunteer leaders of these classes. And so I went from not running at all to running half marathons in the space of about 6 months, which didn't
Amazing.
agree with my knees particularly well, but it lasted for a little while, and it was good for my schedule, and I got reasonably fit. And then when I found CrossFit, I realized I really wasn't as fit as I thought I was.
When the runs come up these days, does any of that old capacity still linger, or the knees are like, those days are gone?
Actually, it's gotten a lot better.
Oh, okay.
I did find that like there were times when I had patellar tendonitis, something fierce in one of my knees, and that was one of the reasons I backed away from running. And when I started CrossFit, it bugged me a fair bit. It bugged me to the point where I couldn't do double unders, not just because I couldn't get the mechanics right, but because it was really uncomfortable on each landing. So I just kind of checked out and figured I'd never wind up coming back to that skill. But then when I started really doing a lot of squatting and a lot of tertiary movements that would wind up generating a little bit more strength in the musculature around the knee to provide support to the patellar tendon, it really made a big difference. And so I started to get comfortable doing short runs and even medium runs again as they appeared in the WOD. And then I finally felt comfortable enough to make a concerted effort to start learning double unders. Still took forever, but it didn't hurt anymore. And so I couldn't use that as an excuse anymore.
Right, yeah. And part of that story you mentioned that in your 20s you're into martial arts and you said you achieved your black belt in 98.
Yep.
Is that something that have you maintained anything in there? Have you kind of hung that up, so to speak?
Hung it up in a roundabout way, but it's shocking how much of it I've still retained. I've met up with buddies that I had gone to martial arts classes with way back in the day, and combination of still being fairly fit from CrossFit and everything that I've done since then, I feel pretty capable, but
Mm,
I also still have that muscle memory. It really surprises me how much of it I've retained. I think once you learn the mechanics and the underpinnings of why you move a particular way, and I think this is kind of like the transference that we see in how we move in CrossFit versus how we move in everyday life. If you really internalize that and you understand the mechanics of it, it translates to other areas of your life. And so I found that when I started CrossFit, there were certain body positions, certain movements that came very naturally to me because of my past in martial arts that I either had to use exactly as I had learned them or find subtle variations to override what my brain wanted to do naturally. And it really made a big difference to how I move.
So you're 49 years old now, started CrossFit in 2015, so we're talking about a decade here.
Yep.
And what has been your personal evolution or lessons learned over the course of that? Does it still look the same for you? Is it 5 days a week? Is it a burn it down every sort of a kind of a day? What does it look like today for you?
Well, it's changed radically since I got elected because the time schedule, I couldn't have been prepared for how much demand there was on my time.
Mm,
And it's all over the place. I mean, you're kind of on 24/7. I routinely get last minute calls to go to an official event to represent the city, or just because I'm a member of the community and I'm perceived as a leader in the community, I'm invited to different functions just to say that I was there, kind of thing.
he never
So
sleeps.
yeah, it makes it really tough to figure out how to fit that class schedule back in. So it's a little like that frenetic period in my 30s when I wound up having to switch to running in order to be able to get things in. It's one of the reasons that I invested so heavily in the gym that I have at home,
Mm-hmm.
because it does give me the flexibility. So I'm able to get a couple of workouts in a week, but I really miss being able to get into my affiliate. My entire time with Linchpin, I've sort of been doing the hokey pokey. I've got one foot into Linchpin, and I go through your programming religiously, and I watch what's happening, and I'll cherry pick the odd workout to do. But then I'm also a coach and a member at my affiliate, and I'm looking to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
I'm representing myself there. So I've always had this dual personality thing going on with how I train. And then when I got elected, trying to figure out, okay, well, the affiliate only like their last class of the day is at 6:30, and very often I have functions that bump into that. And so
Mm,
then I have to decide, am I going to get a workout in today? Am I going to do something short at home?
right.
I'm still trying to adhere to the notion of, go really hard one day a week and go heavy one day a week, and then anything else I can fill in around that. That'll
Is
at least
winning.
keep me stable. I'm not going to move the needle any, but I won't fall off a cliff either.
I would have to think that given the schedule that you just outlined and responsibilities getting pulled in all these different directions, that, and sadly, you don't have as much time and as much rigidity in your flex in your schedule to know like, hey, I'm going to be able to work out X number of times a week at these times, that I would have to think that makes nutrition, which was already important, probably profoundly important.
Oh yeah.
At the same time, if you're getting pulled to all these little functions and mixers, probably with some appetizers and some drinks and some whatever, right?
Yeah.
Is that quite an uphill battle?
Yeah, you have to be pretty disciplined. I walk into a lot of these function and there's a lot of pastries and stuff. I mean, to be fair, most of the ones that are held by the city have a mix of things that are pretty healthy and some things that are not. And so as
Hmm.
long as I make a beeline for the fruits and vegetables, I'm usually pretty good. But it is an uphill battle. But honestly, the thing that's probably the toughest is getting enough food in.
Hmm.
Even though I'm going to a lot of these functions, I'm out talking to people. I don't have a lot of
Right.
time to sit and eat. So I
Right.
very often go to these functions and I'm probably one of the only people in the room that hasn't gotten to sit down and have a meal. And
Interesting.
so trying to figure out when to get the nutrition in, like I feel it when I go to work out because I'll just feel the tank drain real early.
Hmm.
And so I'm having to pound some protein shakes and get some other nutrition in a little bit more on the go to try to make sure that I've got enough.
Before we clicked onto that, I looked up at your Linchpin history there, and I didn't realize, man, you started Linchpin August of 2019, so you're coming up on 6 years, believe it or not. Time
Yeah.
time flies. What in the world has kept you around for 6 years? I'm very glad that you did, but you've got some serious time under tension now. So what is it that keeps you engaged?
Well, I mean, a lot of things. One is, I mean, your style of coaching and programming is very much in line with where my head is. And so it feels like a mirror of where I would ultimately want to go myself. I mean, I do a
Hmm.
fair bit of programming myself at my gym, but our gym uses HWPO at the moment. But I do all the programming for the weightlifting class that I run. And so I try to incorporate some of the same learning. I mean, you talk about your fitness IQ very often, and it's that learning. I mean, I'm engaged in the community more for that than anything.
Mm.
And so, I'll cherry pick a workout to give it a try, and it'll be a workout that has a movement in it that I suck at, or
Yeah.
something that I know I haven't done in a while, and I probably should, dance with the devil at least a
Right.
little bit on a
Right.
workout like that. So, that's what's kept me around. And seeing the degree of positivity that's in the Linchpin group is I mean, I know you know how rare it is, but I can tell you from my experience now being, I hate to call myself a politician because I don't think of myself that way. I'm an elected troubleshooter.
There you go.
Uh, but the kind of vitriol that I see in the community groups, and it doesn't have to be aimed at me. People are aiming it at each other. You have there's community groups all across just my area of Halifax that represent like each individual neighborhood has their own thing, and they use it to
Mhm.
communicate with one another. And they get really nasty in a hurry for seemingly no reason. It'll just veer sideways and you
Agreed.
you can't explain why. And so the positivity that's in the Linchpin community is kind of ridiculously astonishing.
I know.
So I
The
mean,
goal, the goal is for us just not
props
to
to
mess it
you
up.
and props to you and props to the members for keeping it that way. Because I know like
100%.
you only chime in periodically. It's the members themselves that are really driving that positivity. And so it would be awfully hard for me to walk away from that, even though I'm not the most engaged in the community.
Well, man, we appreciate you for sure. Out of curiosity, I'll let you get back to your day, but how can people find out more about you, whether it's social media, whether it's your marketing company, whether it's your role with the government? I don't know if you've got I don't know, something where they can upvote you as a politician. I don't know how it works, but whatever it is, go ahead and promote away. How can people find you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm hoping to be able to get my podcast back up and running. I've been I did have to put on pause after I decided to run for office, mostly because I couldn't figure out how to fit it back in my schedule. But I am
Hmm.
starting to
Oh, good.
I've got some ideas percolating to have a few conversations for my podcast as well. So that's the Box Jumper podcast. I know quite a few members of the Linchpin community have followed me on that channel
Yep.
specifically. So I'm on Instagram as Box Jumper over 40. And you can find the Box Jumper podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms. My marketing company is QB Marketing. I'm not actively seeking new clients, but if you want to learn about what kind of stuff I do, feel free to jump onto that as well. And then on the city side, I'm John St. Amand, HRM for Halifax Regional Municipality on Instagram and Facebook.
That's awesome, man. Well, it was fascinating. You're the first person I've talked to that's got dabbled their toe into politics, so it's cool just to hear even a sliver of what goes on there. And I'm sure it's an uphill battle, but it's good to know that folks like you are the ones trying and fighting to steer the ship in the right direction. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you. Please keep up the good work and congrats on coming up on 6 years with Lynchpin, man.
Thanks, Pat. I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day up there.
All right. Thanks.